If today has been long, heavy, or filled with too many thoughts, then this quiet moment is for you. Before our story begins, give yourself permission to stop carrying the day. You do not need to solve everything tonight. You do not need to answer every worry. For now, simply let the world slow down. Draw the curtains, turn off the bright lights, or let them fade into a softer glow. Rest your body into the bed, loosen your shoulders, unclench your hands, and let your breathing become gentle. Here, we explore the quiet side of history and science, told slowly, softly, and peacefully, so your mind can drift while your body begins to rest. If this is your first time here, please subscribe and join us for more calming stories made for sleep. Now, close your eyes if you wish, settle into the stillness, and let tonight's story carry you away. The ocean looks calm from the surface. Waves move gently beneath the open sky. The horizon stretches wide and quiet, and from a distance the sea seems simple, almost peaceful. But beneath that familiar surface lies a world very few people have ever seen. A world where sunlight disappears, where mountains rise unseen beneath thousands of meters of water, where strange creatures drift through darkness, glowing softly with their own light, and where the deepest valleys on Earth lie hidden beneath the ocean floor. For most of human history, no one knew these places existed. Tonight, we are going to descend slowly into that hidden world, layer by layer, through the silent depths of the ocean. But before we descend into the deepest waters of the ocean, let's begin where every journey into the sea begins, at the surface, where the ocean meets the sky, and where the story of the deep ocean quietly starts. Tonight, we begin somewhere very familiar, not in a distant galaxy, not in the depths of an ancient ruin, but here on Earth, beside a quiet ocean. The surface of the sea lies calm under the night sky. The moon rests gently on the water, its pale reflection stretching across the slow rhythm of the waves. From a distance, the ocean often feels peaceful, almost reassuring, as if it were a vast, breathing presence that has settled into a comfortable silence. For most of human history, this calm surface was all anyone truly knew. Long before ships crossed entire oceans, before satellites mapped the seafloor and submarines descended into darkness, people stood along coastlines and looked outward into a horizon that seemed endless. The sea was both invitation and mystery. It carried trade, fish, and stories, yet it also concealed something far larger than anyone could imagine. Even today, standing at the edge of the ocean at night, it is easy to believe that what we see is most of what exists. The waves rise and fall in patient repetition. A faint wind travels across the water. Occasionally, a distant boat light moves slowly along the horizon. Everything feels quiet, almost simple, but the ocean has never been simple. The truth is that the calm surface is only a very thin boundary, a fragile line separating our familiar world from another one entirely. Beneath that shifting skin of water lies a realm so vast, so old, and so little explored, that even now, in the modern age, much of it remains unknown. If the ocean were a book, the part we see from the shore would be only its cover. Everything else lies below. Slowly, very slowly, the water deepens. Just beneath the surface, sunlight still travels through the sea. Here, the upper world remains bright and alive. Fish move through currents of light. Coral reefs form quiet cities built over thousands of years. The water holds colors, movement, and warmth. This is the part of the ocean that humans understand best. Sailors have crossed it, divers have explored it, fishermen have lived their lives upon it. And yet, even here, the sea already begins to change. As you imagine yourself drifting gently above the water, perhaps on a small boat under the quiet night sky, it helps to remember something simple but profound. The ocean is not merely wide, it is deep. On average, the ocean is nearly 4 kilometers deep. In some places, it descends far beyond that, plunging into trenches so deep that sunlight has never touched their floors. These depths existed long before the first human being ever walked along a shoreline. They existed before cities, before languages, even before the first animals began to move across the land. The deep ocean is older than human history, and tonight we are not rushing into it. There is no need for urgency here. The ocean itself has always moved slowly. Its currents travel across entire basins over the course of centuries. Its ecosystems develop over spans of time that feel almost geological. So we begin gently. Imagine the water beneath you. The surface reflects the sky like a mirror, but just below it, the sea begins to dim. Sunlight fades gradually as depth increases. Colors soften, then slowly disappear. Red vanishes first, then orange, then yellow. Each meter downward takes us slightly farther from the familiar brightness of the surface world. For centuries, people assumed that the deeper ocean must be empty, lifeless, and silent. It seemed logical. Without sunlight, without plants, how could life survive there? But the ocean has never followed human expectations. Hidden beneath its calm surface lies one of the most extraordinary environments on Earth. Creatures live there that glow in complete darkness. Ecosystems thrive without sunlight. Entire communities of life gather around underwater volcanoes where boiling mineral water rises from the seafloor. And yet, all of that begins with this moment. The quiet surface, the gentle waves, the illusion that the ocean is calm and easily understood. Tonight we will move slowly downward through the layers of the sea, exploring a world that has existed for millions of years without needing human attention or approval. The deeper we go, the more the ocean reveals how much of our planet remains unseen. For now, though, we stay here at the surface. The moonlight moves softly across the water. The night air is cool and steady. Somewhere far below, the deep ocean waits patiently, just as it always has. And with that quiet beginning, our journey downward can begin.
The calm surface. Tonight, we begin somewhere very familiar, not in a distant galaxy, not in the depths of an ancient ruin, but here on Earth, beside a quiet ocean. The surface of the sea lies calm under the night sky. The moon rests gently on the water, its pale reflection stretching across the slow rhythm of the waves. From a distance, the ocean often feels peaceful, almost reassuring, as if it were a vast, breathing presence that has settled into a comfortable silence. For most of human history, this calm surface was all anyone truly knew, long before ships crossed entire oceans, before satellites mapped the seafloor and submarines descended into darkness. People stood along coastlines and looked outward into a horizon that seemed endless. The sea was both invitation and mystery. It carried trade, fish, and stories. Yet it also concealed something far larger than anyone could imagine. Even today, standing at the edge of the ocean at night, it is easy to believe that what we see is most of what exists. The waves rise and fall in patient repetition. A faint wind travels across the water. Occasionally, a distant boat light moves slowly along the horizon. Everything feels quiet, almost simple, but the ocean has never been simple. The truth is that the calm surface is only a very thin boundary, a fragile line separating our familiar world from another one entirely. Beneath that shifting skin of water lies a realm so vast, so old, and so little explored that even now, in the modern age, much of it remains unknown. If the ocean were a book, the part we see from the shore would be only its cover. Everything else lies below. Slowly, very slowly, the water deepens. Just beneath the surface, sunlight still travels through the sea. Here, the upper world remains bright and alive. Fish move through currents of light. Coral reefs form quiet cities built over thousands of years. The water holds colors, movement, and warmth. This is the part of the ocean that humans understand best. Sailors have crossed it. Divers have explored it. Fishermen have lived their lives upon it. And yet, even here, the sea already begins to change. As you imagine yourself drifting gently above the water, perhaps on a small boat under the quiet night sky, it helps to remember something simple but profound. The ocean is not merely wide, it is deep. On average, the ocean is nearly 4 kilometers deep. In some places, it descends far beyond that, plunging into trenches so deep that sunlight has never touched their floors. These depths existed long before the first human being ever walked along a shoreline. They existed before cities, before languages, even before the first animals began to move across the land. The deep ocean is older than human history, and tonight we are not rushing into it. There is no need for urgency here. The ocean itself has always moved slowly. Its currents travel across entire basins over the course of centuries. Its ecosystems develop over spans of time that feel almost geological. So we begin gently. Imagine the water beneath you. The surface reflects the sky like a mirror, but just below it, the sea begins to dim. Sunlight fades gradually as depth increases. Colors soften, then slowly disappear. Red vanishes first, then orange, then yellow. Each meter downward takes us slightly farther from the familiar brightness of the surface world. For centuries, people assumed that the deeper ocean must be empty, lifeless, and silent. It seemed logical. Without sunlight, without plants, how could life survive there? But the ocean has never followed human expectations. Hidden beneath its calm surface lies one of the most extraordinary environments on Earth. Creatures live there that glow in complete darkness. Ecosystems thrive without sunlight. Entire communities of life gather around underwater volcanoes, where boiling mineral water rises from the seafloor. And yet, all of that begins with this moment. The quiet surface, the gentle waves, the illusion that the ocean is calm and easily understood. Tonight, we will move slowly downward through the layers of the sea, exploring a world that has existed for millions of years without needing human attention or approval. The deeper we go, the more the ocean reveals how much of our planet remains unseen. For now, though, we stay here at the surface. The moonlight moves softly across the water. The night air is cool and steady. Somewhere far below, the deep ocean waits patiently, just as it always has. And with that quiet beginning, our journey downward can begin. The ocean has a way of appearing patient. From above, nothing seems hurried. The surface shifts and folds slowly under the weight of wind and gravity.
forming waves that repeat their movements in quiet patterns that have existed for longer than human memory. A wave rises, travels forward, and then gently dissolves back into the water that created it. Another follows behind it, and another after that. Watching the sea long enough often makes time feel softer. For sailors in the past, these rhythms were more than peaceful scenery. They were signals, warnings, and sometimes companions during long journeys across water that seemed endless. Ancient mariners did not know the science of ocean currents or underwater geography, but they learned something equally valuable. They learned how to observe. They watched the direction of waves. They studied the color of the water. They noticed where birds gathered and where floating plants drifted across the surface. Each small detail offered a clue about what might lie beneath. Yet, even the most experienced sailor could only understand the ocean from above. The sea rarely reveals its deeper secrets easily. Beneath the surface, sunlight enters the water in a soft, scattered way. At first, it remains bright enough to illuminate everything clearly. Fish flash silver as they move through open water. Schools of smaller creatures shift together like living clouds. Sea plants sway slowly in currents that are often too gentle to notice from the surface. This upper layer of the ocean is sometimes called the sunlit zone. It is the most familiar part of the sea. Here, life resembles the rhythms we see on land. Creatures hunt, hide, migrate, and reproduce in patterns that scientists have spent centuries studying. Coral reefs form elaborate ecosystems where thousands of species live side by side, building structures that grow slowly year after year. From above, the ocean may appear empty, but within these first few hundred meters, it is remarkably alive. Still, something interesting happens as depth increases. Light begins to change. The deeper you go, the more sunlight must travel through water, and water has a quiet way of filtering light as it passes. Colors disappear one by one, almost politely, as if the ocean is gently dimming the world. Red fades first. A red fish swimming deeper beneath the surface does not appear red for very long. As the light weakens, its color gradually darkens until it becomes almost invisible against the surrounding water. Orange disappears next, then yellow. By the time you reach several hundred meters below the surface, much of the familiar brightness of daylight has already faded into soft shades of blue and gray.
From the perspective of the ocean, this is still the beginning. The sea extends far beyond this dimming light. Imagine lowering yourself slowly into the water, drifting downward without hurry. The sounds of the surface grow quieter. Waves above you become distant movements rather than visible shapes. The brightness of the sky fades into a pale glow that grows weaker with each passing moment. This descent would feel peaceful, almost dreamlike. The temperature cools slightly. The water becomes darker. Movements become slower. Fish still pass through the water here, but they often appear briefly before vanishing again into the dim surroundings. Some creatures rise from deeper regions during the night, following ancient rhythms that have repeated for millions of years. Every evening, when darkness spreads across the surface of the ocean, countless animals begin a quiet migration upward. Tiny plankton drift toward the upper layers to feed. Small fish follow them. Larger predators follow the fish. This movement happens across nearly every ocean on Earth. It is the largest daily migration of living creatures on the planet, and yet almost no one sees it. From the shore, the sea still looks calm. The moon still reflects gently across the surface. Nothing about the waves suggests that billions of animals are slowly rising from the darkness below. This is one of the ocean's oldest habits. It hides its busiest moments beneath a surface that appears completely still. For most of human history, people assumed the ocean grew empty as it deepened. Without sunlight, how could life survive? Without plants, where would food come from? The deeper waters were imagined as silent, cold, and lifeless. But the ocean had been preparing its quiet answer for millions of years. Long before humans built ships or studied marine biology, the deep sea was already filled with creatures that had adapted perfectly to a world without light. Some developed enormous eyes capable of detecting the faintest glow. Others lost their eyes entirely, relying instead on delicate sensory organs that detect movement in the water. And some evolved something far more remarkable. They learned how to create their own light. But that world lies deeper still. For now, we remain near the upper ocean, where sunlight still filters softly through the water and the rhythms of life remain familiar. Here, the sea still feels connected to the world we know. Above us, the moon drifts slowly across the sky. Below us, the ocean deepens in quiet layers that stretch farther than most people ever imagine. If the entire ocean were drained away, revealing the landscape beneath, Earth would look very different. Vast mountain ranges would appear where tectonic plates push against each other under the sea. Deep valleys and trenches would cut through the ocean floor, some deeper than the tallest mountains on land are high. The ocean floor is not flat. It is a landscape older than human civilization, shaped by volcanic forces, drifting continents, and the slow movements of Earth's crust over unimaginable spans of time. But those features remain hidden beneath kilometers of water, and water, as it turns out, is very good at keeping secrets.
Tonight, we are only beginning to explore those secrets. The calm surface we started from now feels distant above us, even though we have imagined descending only a small distance beneath the waves. The ocean already feels different. The light is softer, the water is cooler, the sense of depth is growing stronger, and somewhere below, the next layer of the ocean waits quietly, a region where sunlight begins to fade into twilight, a place where creatures start to glow softly in the dark. The ocean has many layers, each one stranger and more mysterious than the last. And as we continue our slow descent, the familiar brightness of the surface world will gradually give way to something much older, much quieter, and far less understood. For now, the water still holds traces of light, but it will not last forever. Below us, the ocean grows darker, and our journey downward is only beginning. The edge of light. The deeper you drift beneath the surface, the quieter the ocean begins to feel, not because the sea becomes empty, but because the familiar movements of the upper waters slowly fade away. The gentle patterns of waves are now far above. The glow of the moon that once stretched across the surface has softened into a distant shimmer. Here, light still exists, but it is changing. The ocean does not lose sunlight all at once. Instead, the brightness fades gradually, almost thoughtfully, as though the sea itself is dimming the world layer by layer. This region is sometimes called the edge of light. It is the place where the bright world above begins to give way to something quieter and more mysterious below. If you were able to pause here, suspended gently in the water, the scene would feel strangely peaceful. The sunlight reaching this depth has already traveled a long way through the ocean. By the time it arrives, it is no longer sharp or brilliant. Instead, it spreads through the water in soft blue tones, like distant twilight that never fully becomes night. Shadows move slowly here. A fish may appear briefly in the dim light before gliding away into the surrounding water. Schools of smaller creatures pass silently in loose formations, their bodies reflecting the last traces of sunlight that still reach this depth. Everything feels slower. Even the water itself seems heavier, pressing gently from every direction. The deeper you descend, the more the ocean surrounds you completely, holding you within its vast and quiet space. At first, this this darkness might feel unfamiliar, humans are creatures of the surface world. Our eyes are built for sunlight, for landscapes and horizons, for skies that stretch wide above us. The ocean, however, belongs to a very different kind of environment. Down here, light is a temporary visitor. Soon it will disappear entirely. But before that happens, the sea begins to reveal something remarkable. Life adapts. Creatures that live near the edge of light have evolved in ways that might seem almost imaginative to those who have never seen them. Some fish have enormous eyes, carefully shaped to capture every possible fragment of light drifting through the water. Even the faintest glow can be enough to guide them through the dim surroundings. Other animals rely less on sight and more on sensation. Tiny changes in water movement can be detected through delicate sensory organs along their bodies. Vibrations travel through the ocean much more efficiently than they do through air, allowing animals to sense the presence of other creatures long before they come into view. The ocean becomes a world of awareness rather than visibility. Something passes nearby, and the water shifts slightly. A school of fish adjusts its direction. A predator turns slowly toward the disturbance. These interactions happen quietly, continuously, beneath a sky that no longer reaches this depth. If you were watching carefully, you might begin to notice another strange detail. Occasionally, something flashes.
A brief flicker of light appears in the water, small and subtle, like a distant spark in darkness. Then it disappears just as quickly as it arrived. For centuries, sailors and fishermen sometimes reported seeing strange glimmers beneath the waves at night. At the time, many of these stories were dismissed as imagination or reflections from the surface. But the ocean was quietly demonstrating one of its most fascinating secrets. Some of its inhabitants create their own light. This natural glow is called bioluminescence. It is one of the ocean's most extraordinary adaptations. Certain organisms produce light through chemical reactions inside their bodies, generating small flashes or gentle glows that can serve many purposes. Some use light to communicate with others of their species. Some use it to attract prey. Others release sudden bursts of light to confuse predators long enough to escape. In the deeper layers of the ocean where sunlight disappears completely, bioluminescence becomes almost common. But here, near the edge of light, it is still rare enough to feel surprising. A tiny creature glows for a moment before fading again into the darkness. Another drifts slowly past, leaving a faint trail of shimmering blue light that dissolves gently into the surrounding water. It is a quiet spectacle, one that unfolds every night across enormous stretches of the ocean without witnesses. For most of human history, these glowing creatures lived their entire lives unseen. Even now, many species in these waters remain unknown to science. The ocean still hides more living forms than we have yet discovered. As the water grows darker, the sense of depth becomes stronger. Looking upward, the surface now appears as a faint silver glow far above, blurred by distance and drifting currents. Looking downward reveals something else entirely. Darkness. Not the soft darkness of evening or night, but a deeper kind of absence where light has almost completely disappeared. The ocean below seems endless, stretching downward through layers of water that humans rarely visit. This is where the true descent begins. For now, however, we remain near the threshold. The last fragments of sunlight still reach us here. They move gently through the water like distant memories of the world above. Soon even these traces will fade, leaving only the quiet glow of living creatures to illuminate the sea. The ocean has always been patient with its secrets. It reveals them slowly, one layer at a time. Above us lies the familiar brightness of the surface world, where waves move beneath the moon and ships travel across open water. Below us waits a region where sunlight no longer exists, a place where darkness has been uninterrupted for millions of years. As we continue our descent, the faint blue glow around us will soften even further, until the last connection to the sun disappears completely. And when that moment arrives, we will enter a world that belongs entirely to the ocean itself, a world known as the Twilight Zone. But that journey lies just ahead. For now,
We pause here at the edge of light, suspended quietly between the brightness of the surface and the darkness waiting below. The ocean grows still around us, and somewhere beneath our drifting path, the deeper sea continues its silent existence, unchanged and unhurried, just as it has been for ages beyond counting.
Entering the twilight zone. If you remain here for a moment longer, drifting quietly at the edge of light, something subtle becomes clear. The ocean is not simply getting darker, it is changing character. The upper layers of the sea still feel connected to the world above. Currents move with the influence of wind. Temperature shifts with the seasons. Creatures migrate up and down, following rhythms that mirror the cycle of day and night. But as depth increases, these familiar patterns begin to loosen. The influence of the surface weakens, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, the ocean begins to feel older. Imagine continuing the descent, not quickly. There is no rush here. The ocean has never hurried, and neither do we. Instead, you drift gently downward, passing through water that becomes cooler and more still with each passing moment. The glow above you fades. The light around you softens into a deep shade of blue that grows darker with distance. You are now approaching a region oceanographers call the twilight zone. It begins roughly 200 meters beneath the surface and extends downward for nearly a kilometer. In this immense layer of the ocean, sunlight no longer travels freely. Instead, it arrives weakly, scattered and uncertain, like the final traces of daylight at the end of evening. This is not complete darkness, but it is close. In the twilight zone, the ocean exists in a kind of permanent dusk. The world here never sees sunrise, it never experiences midday brightness, and it never quite reaches full night either. Instead, the water holds a dim bluish glow that seems to come from nowhere in particular. Shapes become silhouettes, movements appear suddenly and then dissolve again into the surrounding darkness. For creatures living here, this half-light is simply normal. Over millions of years, evolution has carefully shaped animals that thrive in these conditions. Their bodies reflect the strange balance of this environment, where visibility is limited and survival often depends on remaining unnoticed. Some fish are almost perfectly transparent. Their bodies allow faint light to pass through them, making them difficult to see even when they move through open water. Others have developed mirrored scales that scatter the little light available, blending their appearance into the dim surroundings. Predators here often rely on patience. Rather than chasing prey through bright waters, they drift quietly through the twilight, waiting for movement. A small fish may pass within reach, unaware that something larger has been watching silently in the darkness. Then, with a sudden motion, the stillness breaks, but only briefly. Moments later, the water returns to calm. Life continues here with remarkable restraint. There are no dramatic landscapes of coral reefs, no sunlight illuminating colorful ecosystems as we see near the surface. Instead, the twilight zone is vast and open, filled with drifting organisms that move through the water like living particles. Tiny plankton form the base of this hidden world. These microscopic creatures drift through the ocean currents, feeding on what little energy still reaches this depth. Though each individual plankton is small beyond imagination, together they create one of the largest biological systems on Earth. Everything else depends on them. Small fish feed on plankton, larger fish feed on those fish, and somewhere deeper still, larger predators wait patiently for opportunities to appear. Yet even here, where sunlight barely survives, the ocean reveals another layer of quiet complexity. Every night, something extraordinary happens. As darkness spreads across the surface of the sea, billions of animals rise slowly from the twilight zone toward the upper waters.
This movement begins gently at first. Small organisms drift upward through the water column, following instincts that have guided them for millions of years. Soon after, larger creatures follow. Fish, squid, and countless other animals begin the same upward journey. From above, nothing appears different. The surface of the ocean still reflects the moon. Waves continue their slow rhythm against distant shores. But beneath that calm surface, a massive migration is unfolding.
Scientists call it the Diel vertical migration. It is the largest daily movement of living creatures on the planet. Every night, vast populations of animals travel hundreds of meters upward to feed in the rich waters near the surface, and every morning, before the sun rises fully above the horizon, they descend once again into the safety of the twilight zone. This silent migration has occurred every day for millions of years, long before humans existed, long before the first ships ever crossed the ocean. For most of history, no one knew it was happening. The ocean, once again, kept its secret. If you continue drifting downward now, the last fragments of sunlight begin to fade even further. The faint blue glow that once surrounded you grows softer and more distant. Shapes become harder to distinguish. Creatures that pass nearby may only appear as brief shadows moving through the water before disappearing again into the dim surroundings. Here, the ocean feels truly immense. There are no visible boundaries, no seafloor in sight, only open water stretching above and below, a quiet volume of darkness that seems almost infinite. The deeper you descend into the twilight zone, the more the ocean begins to belong entirely to itself. Human presence becomes almost unimaginable here. The pressures of the water increase steadily with depth, pressing inward from every direction. Temperatures grow colder, light continues to fade, yet life persists. In fact, the twilight zone contains an astonishing amount of life. Many scientists believe that the total mass of fish living in this region may exceed that of all the fish humans regularly harvest near the surface. But because these creatures remain hidden in deep waters, they are rarely seen. The ocean continues its quiet habit of concealing its most abundant worlds. Occasionally, another brief spark of bioluminescent light appears nearby. A tiny organism glows for a moment before fading away again. Another responds with a faint pulse of blue light, farther in the darkness. For creatures living here, these signals may mean many things. A warning, an invitation, a trap. To human eyes, they appear almost magical, like distant stars suspended in black water. But here in the ocean's twilight, they are simply part of everyday life. Gradually, the final traces of sunlight begin to disappear entirely. Looking upward now reveals only a distant suggestion of brightness far above. The water surrounding you becomes darker, quieter, more mysterious with each passing moment. Soon, the twilight itself will give way to complete darkness. Below lies the next great layer of the ocean, a region known as the midnight zone. Here, sunlight has never existed. The creatures that live there have evolved in a world without day or night, guided only by the faint glows of bioluminescence and the subtle movements of water around them. It is a place older than most landscapes on land, a realm of quiet pressure, drifting life, and extraordinary adaptations. But for tonight, our journey pauses here, at the edge of the twilight zone. Above us lies the distant surface, where waves continue their endless rhythm beneath the moonlit sky. Ships may pass quietly across those waters, unaware of the immense world below. And beneath us, the deeper ocean waits patiently, silent, dark, ancient. In the next part of our journey, we will descend further still, leaving behind the last memories of sunlight and entering a region where life has learned to glow within the darkness itself. But for now, the twilight surrounds us, soft, dim, and endlessly calm. The twilight zone, the deeper ocean, does not announce itself suddenly. There is no clear line where light ends and darkness begins. Instead, the sea changes slowly, almost thoughtfully, as if the ocean prefers to guide its visitors gently from one world into another. Above us, the surface still exists somewhere far away. If you were to look upward carefully, you might notice the faintest glow, a distant memory of the sun that still reaches down through hundreds of meters of water. But here, that light has already become fragile. The twilight zone stretches through a vast region of the ocean, beginning roughly 200 meters below the surface and extending downward to nearly 1,000 meters. Within this immense space, sunlight becomes weak and scattered, arriving only as a dim blue haze that never quite forms a clear direction. It is neither day nor night. Instead, it is a permanent dusk. In many ways, the twilight zone is one of the most mysterious environments on Earth. Even today, scientists know far less about it than about many regions of the Moon or Mars. The reason is simple: it is difficult to reach. The pressure increases steadily as depth grows. The darkness makes observation challenging, and the creatures that live here have evolved in ways that often allow them to vanish almost completely into the surrounding water. For centuries, the twilight zone remained largely unknown. Early sailors imagined the deep ocean as empty. Without sunlight, they believed nothing could survive there. The idea seemed logical enough at the time. Life on land depends on sunlight, plants, and warmth. Without those things, how could living systems continue? But the ocean rarely follows simple assumptions. When the first deep-sea expeditions began exploring these depths in the 19th century, scientists were astonished by what they found. Nets lowered hundreds of meters into the water returned filled with unfamiliar animals, many of which seemed almost otherworldly. Fish with enormous eyes, creatures that glowed softly in the darkness, animals with delicate bodies that appeared almost transparent. The twilight zone was not empty. It was alive, and not just with a few scattered species, but with entire ecosystems, carefully balanced within the dim blue water. One of the most common inhabitants of this region is a small fish known as the lanternfish. Despite its modest size, the lanternfish may be one of the most abundant vertebrates on Earth. Trillions of them move through the twilight zone across the world's oceans, forming vast populations that drift through the water in quiet, shifting groups. Their name comes from small organs along their bodies called photophores. These organs produce faint light. To a human observer, the glow might appear subtle, almost like distant starlight seen through fog. But for animals living in this environment, such light carries meaning. Lanternfish use their glowing patterns for communication. Each species has its own arrangement of photophores, forming patterns that allow individuals to recognize others of their kind in the dim water. The light may also help them disguise themselves from predators below. In the twilight zone, light can hide as easily as it reveals. Many creatures produce soft illumination on the underside of their bodies, matching the faint glow of sunlight filtering down from above. When a predator looks upward, the fish's glow blends perfectly with the background light, making the animal nearly invisible. This strategy is called counter-illumination. It is one of the ocean's most elegant survival techniques. Life in the twilight zone often depends on remaining unseen. Predators hunt by detecting the faint outlines of animals against the dim light above. Prey animals survive by blending carefully into that same background. Every creature participates in this quiet visual balance. The result is a world of subtle movement. Fish drift slowly through the water, conserving energy. Squid glide silently using gentle pulses of their bodies. Tiny organisms float in enormous numbers, carried along by currents that move almost imperceptibly through the deep ocean. Everything feels calm, but beneath that calm lies constant awareness. A predator
may be watching from below. A school of fish may suddenly change direction. A flash of bioluminescent light may appear briefly in the distance before fading away again. The twilight zone is not dramatic in the way shallow coral reefs are. There are no bright colors or crowded structures of stone and coral. Instead, it is a wide, open space where life moves through darkness with remarkable patience. And patience is a valuable skill here. Food is not always abundant. Without sunlight, plants cannot grow in this region of the ocean. Most of the energy that sustains Twilight Zone ecosystems comes from above. Tiny particles of organic material drift downward from the surface waters like slow-moving snow. Scientists sometimes call this marine snow. It consists of fragments of dead plankton, bits of algae, microscopic organisms, and countless other particles that fall gradually through the ocean. For creatures living in the Twilight Zone, the steady rain of nutrients provides a vital source of food. Tiny animals feed on the falling particles, larger animals feed on them, and the cycle continues. Yet the Twilight Zone is not only a place where life waits patiently for food to drift down from above. Every night, something far more dynamic begins to unfold. As darkness spreads across the surface of the ocean, the inhabitants of the Twilight Zone begin to rise. Lanternfish leave their deeper hiding places and swim upward toward the richer waters near the surface. Squid follow. Small crustaceans drift upward through the water column. The entire ecosystem begins to move. This nightly ascent can cover hundreds of meters in depth. Billions of animals participate in the journey, creating a slow upward flow of life that spreads across the ocean like an invisible tide. From the perspective of space, this migration is completely hidden. Satellites cannot see it. Ships passing overhead rarely notice it.
Yet, every night, across every ocean on Earth, the Twilight Zone empties as its inhabitants travel upward to feed beneath the cover of darkness. By morning, they will return again, downward, back into the safety of dim blue water, back into the quiet world of twilight, and somewhere deeper still, beyond the reach of even this fading light, another realm waits patiently beneath us, the Midnight Zone. But we are not there yet. For now, we remain suspended in the vast twilight, drifting slowly among creatures that have adapted perfectly to a world balanced between light and darkness. The ocean continues to deepen below, and the journey is only beginning. Life in the dim blue in the Twilight Zone. Survival often depends on a delicate balance between patience and awareness. The water here is vast and open, stretching for hundreds of meters in every direction. There are no reefs or forests of sea plants to provide shelter. Instead, the ocean becomes an enormous drifting landscape, where creatures must rely on subtle adaptations to survive. One of the most striking animals in this region is the viperfish. At first glance, the viperfish might seem almost frightening. Its body is slender and dark, built for life in deep water. But what draws attention most are its teeth, long, needle-like fangs that extend beyond the fish's mouth, even when it is closed. In the dim twilight of the ocean, such features are not meant to intimidate. They are tools for survival. Food in the Twilight Zone can be unpredictable. Creatures may drift for long periods before encountering a meal. When an opportunity finally appears, predators must act quickly and decisively. The long teeth of the viperfish help ensure that once prey is captured, it does not escape. Yet despite its formidable appearance, the viperfish moves slowly most of the time. Energy is precious here. Rather than chasing prey through open water, it often drifts quietly, suspended in the dim blue environment. Sensitive organs along its body detect the faintest vibrations in the surrounding water. When something approaches, perhaps a small fish or a drifting crustacean, the viperfish may move suddenly, For a brief moment, the calm breaks. Then the water becomes still again. Nearby, another hunter glides through the twilight. This one is softer in shape, its body flowing gently as it moves through the water. A deep-sea squid drifts forward using slow pulses of its mantle, its tentacles trailing behind like ribbons in the dim light. Squid are among the most intelligent animals in the ocean. Even in the twilight zone, they demonstrate remarkable awareness of their surroundings. Their large eyes gather what little light remains, allowing them to detect silhouettes moving through the water above or below. But vision is not their only advantage. Many deep-sea squid possess their own bioluminescent organs, capable of producing sudden flashes of light. These brief illuminations may serve several purposes. They can startle predators, attract curious prey, or communicate silently with other squid in the surrounding water. Sometimes the glow appears like a brief blue spark, then darkness returns. In this world of dim light, such flashes can carry meaning across surprisingly long distances. Farther away, another species drifts through the water with quiet grace, the dragonfish. Its body is dark and elongated, blending almost perfectly with the surrounding darkness. Along its underside, small photophores emit a faint glow, carefully calibrated to match the dim light filtering from above. This strategy makes the dragonfish nearly invisible when viewed from below. But the dragonfish possesses another remarkable feature. Beneath its eyes are specialized organs that produce a unique kind of bioluminescent light, red light. In the deep ocean, most animals cannot see red wavelengths because red light disappears quickly as sunlight travels through water. For this reason, red coloration is almost invisible at these depths. The dragonfish, however, has evolved the rare ability to see this color.
This allows it to illuminate nearby prey with a soft red glow that remains invisible to most other creatures. The dragonfish can see clearly what others cannot. It is a quiet advantage, a hidden lantern in the dark. Moments like these remind us that the twilight zone is not simply dim, it is intricate. Every adaptation, every small glow of light, every unusual body shape reflects millions of years of evolution within this narrow band between brightness and darkness. And yet the twilight zone remains peaceful in its own way. Large animals rarely rush through the water here. Most creatures move slowly, conserving energy in an environment where food may be scarce. The currents drift gently, carrying small organisms through the water column, like snowflakes falling through the night. Marine snow continues its steady descent from the surface above. Tiny fragments of organic matter drift downward endlessly, feeding countless animals that filter the particles from the water. Some creatures extend delicate feeding appendages to capture these falling nutrients. Others drift passively, waiting for the currents to deliver food. This slow rain of life links the twilight zone to the world above. Without it, the deep ocean would be far more difficult to sustain. Every particle tells a story of the surface, of plankton blooms, drifting algae, and the countless small lives that flourish where sunlight still reaches the sea. But the twilight zone is not only a place of drifting and waiting, it is also a crossroads. Animals moving upward from deeper waters pass through this region during their nightly journeys. Creatures descending from the surface must cross it again before returning to the safety of deeper darkness. In this sense, the twilight zone is always in motion, not through dramatic currents or violent storms, but through the quiet migration of life itself. At certain times of night, lanternfish gather in enormous schools that shimmer faintly as their photophores glow together. Predators drift nearby, sensing the movement of thousands of small bodies passing through the water. Occasionally, a burst of bioluminescent light erupts as a startled creature releases a defensive flash. For a moment, the darkness sparkles with brief flashes of blue. Then the ocean returns to calm. If you remain suspended here long enough,
the sense of time begins to soften. There are no sunrises to mark the passing of days, no shadows moving across landscapes. Instead, the twilight zone exists in a kind of steady continuity, where the rhythms of life unfold slowly and quietly beneath the distant world above us. Ships may cross the ocean without realizing what lies beneath. Below us, the deeper ocean waits, and if we continue drifting downward, the faint blue glow surrounding us will begin to fade even further. Soon, the twilight itself will dissolve. The ocean will grow darker still, and we will enter a region where sunlight has never existed at all, a place where life relies entirely on its own light, the midnight zone. But that descent belongs to the next stage of our journey. For now, we remain here among the drifting hunters and glowing signals of the twilight zone, surrounded by a quiet world balanced perfectly between light and darkness. The ocean continues to deepen, and somewhere far below, the true night of the sea awaits. The great nightly migration. If you remain in the twilight zone long enough, something remarkable eventually begins to unfold. At first, the change is subtle. The water around you remains dim and quiet, filled with the slow drifting of plankton and the occasional silhouette of a passing fish. Nothing dramatic appears to be happening. The ocean still feels calm, suspended in its permanent dusk. But somewhere far above, the surface world is changing. Night is arriving as the sun sinks below the horizon and darkness spreads across the open sea. The delicate balance of the twilight zone begins to shift. The faint glow of sunlight that once filtered down through hundreds of meters of water weakens even further. And that change is a signal. Across the twilight zone, countless creatures begin to stir. Lanternfish adjust their position in the water. Small crustaceans drift upward through the dim layers. Squid turn their bodies slowly toward the distant surface. The migration has begun. At first, the movement is gentle, almost invisible. A few animals rise slowly through the water column, their bodies moving upward with deliberate patience. Then more begin to follow. Soon, the entire twilight zone is in motion. Billions of creatures begin ascending toward the upper ocean, moving upward through hundreds of meters of water under the cover of darkness. Lanternfish swim steadily toward the surface. Tiny shrimp-like animals known as krill drift upward in enormous clouds. Transparent jelly organisms pulse gently as they travel through the water. This nightly journey occurs across nearly every ocean on Earth. It is so vast that scientists consider it the largest migration of animals on the planet. Yet it happens quietly, hidden beneath the surface of the sea. From the perspective of a ship sailing overhead, the ocean remains calm. The moon may reflect softly across the waves. A distant breeze may ripple the surface water. Nothing suggests that beneath those waves, an entire ecosystem is rising upward through the darkness. The reason for this migration is simple: food. Near the surface, microscopic algae and plankton thrive in the presence of sunlight. These tiny organisms form the foundation of the ocean's food web. During the night, when darkness offers protection from many predators, animals from the twilight zone travel upward to feed on this rich supply of life. For lanternfish, the journey is essential. During daylight hours, remaining near the surface would be dangerous. Predators that hunt by sight could easily detect their small bodies against the brightness of the water above. But under the cover of night, the risk is greatly reduced. Darkness provides safety, so the lanternfish rise. Their photophores glow softly as they move, forming faint patterns of blue light scattered throughout the water. In large groups, these lights may appear like distant constellations drifting slowly upward through the sea. Predators follow. Larger fish glide through the migrating schools, searching for opportunities.
Squid dart through the water with sudden bursts of movement. Even animals from deeper regions of the ocean may rise partway into the twilight zone to take advantage of the temporary abundance. For several hours each night, the upper ocean becomes a gathering place for creatures from many different depths. The water fills with movement, yet even during this activity, the ocean remains strangely quiet. The migration is not chaotic. It unfolds gradually, like a slow tide of living bodies drifting upward through darkness. Schools of fish maintain their formations. Squid pulse steadily through the water. Tiny organisms drift gently with the currents. Everything continues with a calm rhythm. If you could observe the ocean from a distance, the scene might resemble a snowfall moving upward instead of downward, a steady flow of life rising through the sea. Scientists studying this migration have discovered that the movement of these animals plays an important role in the Earth's ecosystems. As twilight zone creatures feed near the surface and later return to deeper waters, they transport nutrients downward through the ocean. In doing so, they help regulate the distribution of carbon and other elements within marine environments. The ocean once again reveals its quiet complexity. Even the smallest organisms participate in processes that shape the balance of the planet. But eventually the night begins to pass. Far above the ocean, the first hints of dawn begin to appear along the horizon. The surface waters slowly brighten as sunlight prepares to return. For the creatures of the twilight zone, this change is another signal. It is time to descend. One by one, animals begin their return journey. Lanternfish turn downward and swim back toward deeper water. Squid follow. Krill drift gradually away from the surface. The vast cloud of migrating life begins to sink once more into the dim blue environment below. The process unfolds slowly, just as it began.
Over the course of several hours, billions of animals travel downward through the water column, returning to the safety of deeper darkness before daylight fully illuminates the sea above. By morning, the upper ocean appears almost empty again. The creatures that filled the water during the night have vanished. They are back in the twilight zone, resting, waiting, preparing for the next cycle to begin again. This migration has continued every night for millions of years. It existed long before humans understood the structure of the ocean. It continues today across every ocean basin on Earth, and most people will never see it. The ocean keeps its largest movements hidden beneath a surface that often appears perfectly calm. Here in the twilight zone, the water slowly settles once again into its quiet balance. Lanternfish drift through the dim layers, conserving energy during the long daylight hours. Predators move patiently through the open water. Marine snow continues its gentle descent from the surface above. Everything returns to stillness. But as you drift here, suspended in the dim blue depths, another realization gradually emerges. The twilight zone is not the deepest world of the ocean, not even close. Below this vast region lies another layer entirely. A place where sunlight never reaches, a place where the faint glow of twilight disappears completely. If we continue our descent, the last traces of blue light will fade behind us. The silhouettes of fish will become harder to see. Even the distant glow of the surface will vanish from view. Soon the water will become completely dark, yet life continues even there. In fact, some of the most extraordinary creatures on Earth live in those depths, adapted perfectly to a world without sunlight. They navigate using flashes of bioluminescent light. They sense vibrations through the water. They survive under pressures that would crush most forms of life.
This region is known as the Midnight Zone, a realm of endless darkness stretching thousands of meters beneath the ocean's surface. The Twilight Zone marks the final boundary before entering that world. Here, sunlight fades. Here, the rhythms of the surface lose their influence. Here, the ocean begins to reveal how vast and ancient it truly is. Above us, the distant surface continues its endless dance of wind and waves. Below us, the midnight ocean waits in perfect darkness. And in the next part of our journey, we will descend into that silent world where the sea no longer remembers the sun. For now, though, we remain suspended in the twilight, a quiet realm balanced between brightness and night, a place where billions of creatures drift patiently through dim blue water, following rhythms older than human history. The ocean grows deeper beneath us, and the journey continues. The midnight zone. At some point during our descent, the last memory of sunlight disappears. It does not vanish suddenly. Instead, the faint blue glow that once surrounded us slowly fades, becoming softer and softer until it finally dissolves into something deeper than darkness. Here, the ocean no longer remembers the sun. Looking upward reveals nothing but black water stretching endlessly above. The faint shimmer that once marked the distant surface has disappeared entirely. Even the dim twilight that guided us through the previous layer is gone. This is the midnight zone, a vast region of the ocean beginning roughly 1,000 meters beneath the surface and extending downward for thousands of meters more. It is the largest habitat on Earth, covering an enormous portion of the planet's oceans, and it exists in permanent night. For millions of years, sunlight has never touched these waters. The ocean here feels different. The temperature drops noticeably as depth increases. The water grows colder, often only a few degrees above freezing. At the same time, the pressure becomes immense. Every meter of descent adds the weight of the ocean above, pressing inward from every direction. At a depth of 1,000 meters, the pressure is already more than 100 times greater than at the surface. Yet life continues. If you drift quietly through this darkness, it might seem at first that the ocean has become empty. Without sunlight, without visible landscapes, the water appears still and endless. But patience reveals another truth. Tiny lights begin to appear. At first, a single faint spark glows in the distance, like a star emerging in a night sky. Then another flickers briefly nearby. A third drifts slowly past before fading again into the darkness. These lights are not reflections. They are living creatures. In the midnight zone, bioluminescence becomes one of the most common forms of communication. Many animals here produce their own light, creating flashes, pulses, or steady glows that guide them through the darkness. In fact, scientists estimate that the majority of animals living in the deep ocean possess some form of bioluminescent ability. The midnight zone is not truly dark. It is filled with living light. Some creatures glow softly as they drift through the water, their bodies outlined by delicate blue or green illumination. Others produce sudden bursts of brightness, startling predators or confusing prey in the surrounding darkness. Still others use light as a lure. Among the most famous inhabitants of the midnight zone is the anglerfish. If you could observe one drifting slowly through the deep ocean, you might first notice a faint glow suspended in the water. The glow moves gently, swaying slightly as if attached to something unseen. And in a way, it is. Extending from the anglerfish's head is a thin spine that ends in a small luminous organ. This glowing structure acts like a lantern, attracting curious animals toward the fish waiting silently below. In the darkness of the midnight zone, even a small light can appear inviting. Tiny fish approach the glow. Small crustaceans drift closer, drawn by instinct or curiosity. And then, in a sudden motion, the anglerfish opens its enormous mouth. The moment passes quickly. The darkness returns. Predators in the midnight zone often rely on patience rather than speed. Energy is scarce in these depths,
and unnecessary movement can waste precious resources. Many animals drift quietly through the water, waiting for opportunities to appear. Some possess enormous jaws that allow them to swallow prey nearly as large as themselves. Others have expandable stomachs, enabling them to consume whatever food becomes available. In a world where meals may be unpredictable, such adaptations are essential. Another remarkable inhabitant of the midnight zone is the gulper eel. Its body is long and slender, with a tail that tapers into darkness. But its most extraordinary feature is its mouth. The gulper eel's jaws are enormous compared to the rest of its body, capable of expanding wide enough to swallow animals larger than the eel itself. When prey appears, the eel can suddenly open its mouth like a net, capturing anything within reach. Despite this dramatic ability, the gulper eel spends much of its life drifting slowly through the deep ocean. The midnight zone rewards patience. Occasionally, the darkness is interrupted by something even more mysterious. A delicate chain of glowing lights drifts through the water like a living ribbon. This may be a siphonophore, a colony of tiny organisms that function together as a single animal. Some species extend for dozens of meters, their glowing bodies forming long, elegant structures that pulse slowly through the darkness. Each segment performs a different role. Some capture prey, others provide movement, still others produce light.
Together, they form one of the ocean's most unusual living systems. Elsewhere in the midnight zone, enormous squid glide silently through the water. Their bodies move with slow, powerful pulses, propelling them through the darkness with graceful efficiency. The deep sea has long inspired stories of giant squid, mysterious creatures capable of reaching remarkable sizes. Though rarely seen alive, these animals are believed to inhabit the deeper regions of the ocean, where they hunt fish and other squid in near total darkness. Encounters between giant squid and their predators, such as deep-diving sperm whales, have left scars and marks that hint at battles unfolding far below the surface. Yet most of the midnight zone remains calm. Despite the unusual creatures living here, the overall atmosphere is one of quiet stillness. The water moves slowly, animals conserve energy, bioluminescent lights appear and disappear like distant stars in an endless night sky. In some ways, drifting through the midnight zone feels less like exploring the ocean and more like traveling through space. There is no horizon, no landscape, only darkness filled with scattered points of light. Above us, thousands of meters of ocean separate this world from the surface. Ships may cross the waves without ever realizing the immense ecosystem drifting silently below. Below us, the ocean continues even deeper. Eventually, the water will reach the seafloor, where mountains, valleys, and volcanic ridges form landscapes hidden beneath kilometers of ocean. And in some places, even stranger environments exist. There are regions where superheated water rises from cracks in the Earth's crust, creating ecosystems that do not rely on sunlight at all. Instead, these communities survive through chemical energy released from the planet itself. But that world lies still deeper. For now, we remain suspended in the midnight zone, surrounded by living lights drifting through the darkness. The ocean here has existed in this state for millions of years, long before human civilizations rose and fell, long before ships sailed across the seas,
and long before anyone imagined the strange beauty hidden within the deepest waters of our planet. The darkness remains calm. The creatures continue their silent movements, and somewhere far below, the ocean floor waits patiently in the depths. Our descent is not yet complete, but the midnight zone has welcomed us into one of the most mysterious realms on Earth. And the journey continues, drifting through endless night in the midnight zone. Time seems to move differently. Without sunlight, there are no shadows drifting across the water to mark the passing of hours. There are no changes of color in the sky, no gentle signals of sunrise or sunset. The ocean here remains the same dark expanse, moment after moment, year after year. For the creatures living in this environment, day and night have little meaning. Instead, their lives follow quieter rhythms, subtle cycles of feeding, drifting, and migration shaped by instincts that have evolved over millions of years. If you continue drifting here, suspended gently in the deep ocean, the darkness begins to feel less empty than it first appeared. Small movements become easier to notice. A faint ripple passes through the water as something swims quietly nearby. A tiny cluster of glowing plankton flickers for a moment, then fades again. Farther away, another faint pulse of light appears and disappears, like a distant star blinking briefly in the night. The midnight zone is alive with signals. Many animals here rely on bioluminescence not only for hunting or defense, but also for communication. Some species release carefully patterned flashes of light to signal their presence to potential mates. Others create short bursts of light to startle predators or confuse attackers in the surrounding darkness. In some cases, the glowing displays can be surprisingly elaborate. Certain deep-sea shrimp release clouds of luminous fluid when threatened, creating a glowing distraction that allows them to escape into the darkness. Some squid produce chains of glowing pulses that travel along their bodies like waves of light. Each species has developed its own language of illumination. To humanize, these signals appear mysterious and beautiful. To the animals of the midnight zone, they are simply part of daily life. Yet survival here requires more than light. The pressure of the ocean continues to increase with depth, becoming one of the defining features of this environment. At depths of 2,000 meters, the weight of the water above presses inward with enormous force. The pressure is strong enough to crush most objects that are not specifically adapted to survive here. For creatures of the deep sea, however, this pressure is normal. Their bodies are designed to withstand it. Many lack the air-filled cavities that animals near the surface possess. Instead, their tissues remain flexible, allowing them to move and function even under the immense weight of the surrounding ocean. In many ways, the animals of the midnight zone are perfectly shaped for their environment. Their bodies are often soft and delicate, conserving energy in a world where food can be scarce. Their muscles are built for slow movement rather than sudden bursts of speed. Their senses are tuned to detect the smallest vibrations traveling through the water. Everything about them reflects patience. The deep ocean rewards those who wait. Food arrives unpredictably in these depths. Some animals feed on smaller creatures that drift through the water column. Others rely on the slow rain of organic material falling from the upper ocean, the marine snow that continues its quiet descent through every layer of the sea. Occasionally, something larger falls. The body of a dead fish may drift downward for hours before reaching the deeper waters. Sometimes the remains of much larger animals, whales, sharks, or giant squid, descend slowly through the darkness. When such a body reaches the deep ocean floor, it becomes the center of an entire ecosystem. Scavengers gather quickly. Fish arrive first, followed by crabs, shrimp, and worms that feed on the remains. Over time, bacteria break down the remaining tissues, releasing nutrients that support specialized communities of deep-sea organisms. These events are known as whale falls. They are rare but powerful reminders that even in the deepest ocean, life remains connected to the surface world far above. For years after a whale fall occurs, its bones can continue to support entire ecosystems on the seafloor. But here, in the open waters of the midnight zone, such events are only distant possibilities. Most of the time, life continues quietly. Fish drift slowly through the darkness. Squid glide with gentle pulses of motion. Tiny organisms glow briefly before fading again into the surrounding water. The midnight zone remains vast and calm. Yet even here, where the ocean seems endless, The deeper world still waits below if you were able to descend farther. Moving slowly through thousands of meters of water, you would eventually approach the ocean floor itself. There, the landscape begins to appear. Mountains rise from the seafloor, where underwater ridges stretch across entire ocean basins. Deep valleys cut through the terrain, where tectonic plates shift gradually over time. In some places, volcanic activity continues quietly beneath the water, releasing heat and minerals into the surrounding ocean. These hidden landscapes form the foundation of the deep sea, but reaching them requires traveling even farther downward. The midnight zone is only part of the journey. Below lies another realm entirely, a region where the ocean floor spreads across vast plains of sediment, interrupted occasionally by towering underwater mountains or deep trenches carved into the Earth's crust. And in certain rare locations, something even more extraordinary appears. Hydrothermal vents. From cracks in the sea floor, superheated water rises into the surrounding ocean, carrying dissolved minerals from deep within the earth. These vents create environments unlike any other on the planet, places where life survives not through sunlight but through chemical energy released from the earth itself. Entire communities of organisms thrive around these vents. Giant tube worms, strange crabs, and unusual bacteria gather in dense colonies, forming ecosystems that exist completely independent of the sun. For scientists, these environments offer remarkable insights into how life can survive under extreme conditions. For the creatures living there, it is simply home. But that world belongs to the deepest layers of the ocean. For now, we remain drifting in the midnight zone, suspended between the fading twilight above and the hidden seafloor below. The darkness here feels complete, yet it is far from empty. Lights continue to appear and disappear in the water around us. Creatures glide silently through the endless night, and far above, the distant surface continues its quiet rhythm of wind and waves, unaware of the immense world drifting patiently beneath. Our journey through the ocean is not yet finished. Below us, the seafloor waits in silent stillness, and beyond that, even deeper trenches descend into the most remote places on Earth. But for the moment, the midnight zone surrounds us in calm darkness, a vast, hidden universe of living lights, and the descent continues toward the hidden seafloor. As we continue drifting through the midnight zone, the sense of depth becomes almost impossible to measure. The ocean above us stretches upward for kilometers. The water below continues downward just as far. In every direction, there is only darkness, occasionally interrupted by the quiet glow of living creatures moving through the deep. It is a strange kind of stillness, not the stillness of an empty room, but the calm of a vast environment that has been moving slowly for millions of years. The ocean currents here travel gently across entire basins, sometimes taking centuries to complete their journeys. Even the water itself has a history. Some of the deep ocean currents that move through these depths began their journey near the polar regions of the Earth. Cold, dense water sinks near the poles and slowly spreads across the ocean floor, traveling silently through the deepest layers of the sea. A single parcel of deep water may take hundreds of years to complete its path through the global ocean. In this way, the midnight zone is connected to the entire planet. The deep sea remembers distant places. Cold, Antarctic waters drift through the darkness, carrying traces of minerals and nutrients across enormous distances. These slow currents help circulate the oceans, linking environments that may lie thousands of kilometers apart. Yet here, suspended in the water column, those movements are almost impossible to feel. The deep ocean remains calm. Occasionally, another animal passes nearby. A small fish drifts slowly past, its body barely visible in the darkness. Its large eyes scan the surrounding water for signs of movement. Beneath its body, faint photophores glow softly, creating a subtle outline that helps it blend into the dim background above. Moments later, the fish disappears again into the black water. Life in the midnight zone often exists at the edge of visibility. Creatures move quietly, conserving energy in an environment where every meal matters. Some predators may wait hours or even days before encountering suitable prey. Patience is the defining skill of the deep sea. The deeper you descend, the more the water begins to change. Temperature continues to fall gradually, approaching just a few degrees above freezing. The pressure grows steadily stronger, pressing inward with immense force. Even small objects dropped from the surface would compress and deform under such conditions. But the animals here remain unaffected. Their bodies have evolved to function perfectly under these pressures. Their cells contain special molecules that stabilize proteins and maintain proper chemical balance. Their tissues remain flexible, allowing them to move freely despite the enormous weight of the surrounding water. In many ways, the creatures of the deep sea are more resilient than they appear. Their soft bodies conceal remarkable adaptations. A faint flicker of light appears again in the distance. At first, it seems like another small planktonic organism glowing briefly as it drifts through the water, but as it moves closer, the shape becomes clearer. It is a comb jelly, one of the most delicate animals in the deep ocean. Unlike jellyfish, comb jellies move using rows of tiny hair-like structures called cilia. These cilia beat rhythmically, propelling the animal through the water with graceful, almost hypnotic motion. As they move, the cilia scatter faint light into shimmering patterns. The result is a soft rainbow-like glow that travels along the length of the animal's body. In the darkness of the midnight zone, these displays appear almost magical, like living glass sculptures drifting silently through the sea. The comb jelly glides past without urgency, then it disappears once again into the darkness. Moments like these remind us that the deep ocean is not only mysterious, but beautiful in ways that few people ever witness. Far below, something new begins to emerge. At first, it is only a faint suggestion, a subtle change in the darkness beneath us. The endless black water begins to take on a slightly different texture, as though the depth itself is slowly becoming more solid. We are approaching the ocean floor. For thousands of meters, we have drifted through open water, surrounded by animals that live suspended in the deep sea. But eventually, every ocean basin reaches a boundary where the water meets the Earth's crust. This boundary is the seafloor. The first shapes appear slowly. A distant slope becomes visible far below, faintly illuminated by the occasional flash of bioluminescent light drifting through the water above. As we descend closer, the landscape becomes clearer. The ocean floor is not smooth. Instead, it resembles an enormous desert stretching across the deep sea. Fine layers of sediment cover vast plains that extend for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. These sediments consist of tiny particles that have drifted downward through the ocean for millions of years. Each grain tells a story. Fragments of plankton shells, dust carried from distant continents by wind, ash from volcanic eruptions. All of it settles slowly on the seafloor, forming soft layers that grow thicker over time. In some regions, the sediment may accumulate only a few millimeters every 1,000 years. The deep ocean moves at a geological pace. Occasionally, small animals appear across this quiet landscape.
Sea cucumbers crawl slowly along the sediment, feeding on organic material buried within the mud. Delicate starfish spread their arms across the seafloor, searching patiently for food. Strange worm-like creatures extend their bodies upward from the sediment, filtering nutrients drifting through the water. Even here, at the bottom of the ocean, life continues, but the seafloor holds more than quiet plains. Far in the distance, dark shapes rise from the sediment. Mountains, underwater ridges stretch across the seafloor where tectonic plates pull apart or collide. Some of these ridges extend for thousands of kilometers across the ocean basins, forming the largest mountain systems on Earth. Though most of them remain hidden beneath the sea, between these ridges lie deep valleys and trenches carved into the Earth's crust. Some of these trenches reach extraordinary depths. The deepest known point on Earth lies within the Mariana Trench, descending nearly 11 kilometers beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean. At such depths, the pressure becomes almost unimaginable, more than 1,000 times greater than at sea level. Yet even there, life has been discovered. Tiny shrimp-like animals and strange microbial communities survive in conditions that once seemed impossible. The deeper scientists explore, the more the ocean reveals its quiet resilience. But not all regions of the seafloor are calm. In certain places, the Earth itself becomes active beneath the ocean floor. Cracks in the crust allow superheated water to escape from deep within the planet. This water rises through the seafloor, carrying dissolved minerals and chemicals from the Earth's interior. When the hot water meets the cold ocean, something extraordinary happens. Minerals solidify instantly, forming tall chimneys of dark rock that rise from the seafloor like underwater towers. These are hydrothermal vents. Around them, entire ecosystems flourish. But that world belongs to the next stage of our journey. For now, we hover quietly above the vast plains of the deep ocean floor, surrounded by a landscape that few human eyes have ever seen. Above us stretches the immense darkness of the midnight zone.
Below us lies the silent terrain of the deep sea, and in the next part of our descent, we will move closer to the most unusual environments in the ocean, places where life thrives, not on sunlight, but on the hidden energy of the Earth itself. The ocean grows deeper in its mysteries, and the journey continues. The pressure of the deep ocean as we descend closer to the ocean floor. Another invisible force becomes increasingly important. Pressure at the surface of the ocean. The air presses gently against everything around us. It is something so familiar that most people rarely think about it, but underwater, pressure behaves very differently. Every 10 meters of depth adds the weight of another layer of ocean above. The deeper you go, the heavier the water becomes. At 1,000 meters below the surface, the pressure is already more than 100 times stronger than the air pressure we experience on land. At 3,000 meters, it becomes even greater, pressing inward with quiet but immense force. Yet here in the midnight zone, the animals drift calmly, as though nothing unusual is happening. This is because their bodies are built for this world. Unlike many creatures that live near the surface, deep-sea animals rarely contain large pockets of gas within their bodies. Air compresses easily under pressure, which can cause serious problems for animals that dive too deep. Instead, many deep-sea organisms rely on tissues filled mostly with water. Water does not compress easily. Because of this, their bodies remain stable even under the tremendous pressure of the deep ocean. Their bones are often lighter and more flexible. Their muscles are built for slow, efficient movement rather than powerful bursts of speed. Many species have soft bodies that drift gracefully through the water with minimal effort. In the deep sea, efficiency matters. Energy is precious, and every movement must be carefully balanced against the cost of making it. The ocean here is quiet enough that even the smallest disturbances can travel long distances. Vibrations move easily through water, allowing animals to sense motion far beyond what their eyes can see. Some deep-sea fish possess specialized sensory organs along their bodies that detect these subtle vibrations. With them, they can sense the movement of nearby animals, even in complete darkness. It is a world where feeling replaces seeing. where sound and motion travel farther than light ever could. Even the darkness itself seems heavier. Above us, the immense column of water presses downward with a steady weight that never changes. Unlike the surface ocean, where storms and winds constantly disturb the water, the deep sea remains remarkably stable. Currents move slowly, temperature changes very little. The environment remains calm for centuries at a time. In this sense, the deep ocean is one of the most stable environments on Earth, and yet it remains one of the least explored. Human technology has only recently begun to reach these depths. Submersibles and remotely operated vehicles have allowed scientists to observe deep-sea ecosystems directly, revealing animals and landscapes that were completely unknown only a few decades ago. Each expedition brings new discoveries, new species, new behaviors, new glimpses into a world that has existed quietly for millions of years without human observation. For the creatures of the deep ocean, however, nothing about this world feels mysterious. It is simply home. They drift through the water with calm familiarity, perfectly adapted to the pressure, darkness, and stillness surrounding them. And somewhere below, the ocean floor grows closer, where the water meets the earth gradually. The darkness beneath us begins to take on shape. At first, the seafloor appears only as a faint shadow, barely distinguishable from the surrounding water. But as we descend closer, the outlines of the landscape begin to emerge. The ocean floor spreads outward in every direction. Vast plains of fine sediment stretch across the deep sea like enormous deserts hidden beneath kilometers of water. The surface of this landscape is soft, formed from millions of years of slow accumulation. Tiny particles drift downward from the upper ocean. Fragments of plankton shells, dust carried by wind across distant continents, microscopic remains of marine organisms. All of it settles gently on the seafloor, layer by layer, forming a soft blanket of sediment that grows thicker over time. In some regions, these layers accumulate so slowly that only a few centimeters form over thousands of years. The deep ocean moves at a patient pace across this quiet landscape. Small animals wander slowly. Sea cucumbers glide across the sediment, feeding on organic material buried within the mud. Their soft bodies move steadily along the seafloor, leaving faint trails behind them. Starfish extend their arms outward as they search for food. Delicate worms extend feathery appendages into the water above the sediment, filtering nutrients drifting through the currents. Life exists even here, in the deepest parts of the ocean. But the seafloor is not entirely flat. Far in the distance, the terrain begins to rise. Underwater mountains, called seamounts, emerge from the sediment, their slopes climbing slowly upward through the dark water. Some of these mountains are ancient volcanoes formed millions of years ago when magma pushed upward through the ocean crust. Others belong to long underwater ridges where tectonic plates slowly move apart. These hidden mountain ranges stretch across the ocean basins for thousands of kilometers, forming the largest continuous geological structures on Earth. Yet most of them remain unseen. Their peaks lie far below the surface, rising silently through the darkness. Occasionally, the seafloor descends again into deeper valleys. Some of these valleys become enormous trenches carved into the Earth's crust. These trenches mark places where tectonic plates collide, forcing one plate downward beneath another. In the deepest trenches, the ocean reaches extraordinary depths. The Mariana Trench, located in the Pacific Ocean, descends nearly 11 kilometers beneath the surface. Deeper than Mount Everest is tall. Even there, life has been discovered. Tiny shrimp-like animals known as amphipods have been observed moving across the trench floor.
surviving under pressures that would crush most forms of life. The resilience of life in the deep ocean continues to surprise scientists, but something even more remarkable exists in certain regions of the seafloor. If we move farther across the sediment plains and approach the edges of underwater ridges, the landscape begins to change. The seafloor cracks, and from those cracks, heat emerges. Water heated deep within the Earth's crust rises upward through these openings, carrying dissolved minerals and chemicals from far below the ocean floor. When this superheated water meets the cold surrounding ocean, the minerals rapidly solidify. Tall chimneys of dark rock begin to form. These structures are known as hydrothermal vents. Around them, entire ecosystems appear. Creatures gather in dense communities, feeding not on sunlight but on chemical energy released from the earth itself. Giant tube worms, unusual crabs, and strange bacteria form colonies around the vent openings. Here, life thrives in one of the most extraordinary environments on the planet. But that world belongs to the next stage of our journey. For now, we hover quietly above the deep ocean floor, surrounded by a landscape that has remained hidden from human eyes for most of history. Above us stretches the endless darkness of the midnight zone. Below us lies the silent terrain of the Earth's crust, and somewhere ahead, the mysterious glow of hydrothermal vents begins to appear in the deep ocean darkness. The ocean still holds many secrets, and our descent continues.
Life without sunlight. As we drift slowly across the quiet plains of the deep ocean floor, the darkness begins to change once again. At first, the seafloor appears calm and silent. Fine layers of sediment stretch across the landscape like a vast underwater desert. Small animals move patiently across the mud, feeding on tiny fragments of organic material that have fallen from the distant surface above. But ahead, something different begins to appear. A faint haze rises from the seafloor. It is not the soft glow of bioluminescent creatures drifting through the water column. Instead, it looks more like a dark cloud slowly expanding upward from the ocean floor itself. As we move closer, the shape becomes clearer. Tall chimneys of dark mineral rock rise from the seafloor, some reaching several meters into the water. From their openings, thick plumes of superheated water pour upward into the surrounding ocean. These are hydrothermal vents. The water emerging from these vents has traveled deep within the Earth's crust. There, it has been heated by molten rock and enriched with dissolved minerals drawn from the surrounding stone. By the time the water escapes through cracks in the seafloor, its temperature can exceed 350 degrees Celsius. Yet, despite this extreme heat, the surrounding ocean remains near freezing. When the hot vent water meets the cold deep ocean, the minerals carried within it rapidly solidify. Particles of iron, sulfur, and other elements crystallize instantly, forming dark plumes that rise like underwater smoke. For this reason, some of these vents are known as black smokers. Their chimneys grow slowly as more minerals accumulate over time, building towering structures that resemble strange underwater castles rising from the ocean floor. But the most remarkable feature of these vents is not the heat or the mineral chimneys. It is the life that surrounds them. In the deep ocean, sunlight does not reach these depths. Without sunlight, plants cannot grow, and most ecosystems on Earth would collapse. Yet here, around hydrothermal vents, life thrives. Instead of relying on sunlight, these ecosystems are built upon chemical energy. Deep within the vent water are dissolved chemicals such as hydrogen sulfide. Certain bacteria living near the vents are able to use these chemicals as a source of energy through a process called chemosynthesis. Just as plants on land use sunlight to produce energy through photosynthesis, these bacteria use chemical reactions to produce the energy they need to survive. These bacteria form the foundation of the entire vent ecosystem. From them, a remarkable community of animals has evolved. One of the most iconic creatures of hydrothermal vents is the giant tube worm. If you were to observe one closely, you would notice its long white tube anchored to the seafloor. From the top of this tube extends a bright red plume, gently waving in the surrounding water. Some of these tube worms grow over 2 meters long, yet despite their size, they possess no mouth and no digestive system. Instead, they rely entirely on symbiotic bacteria living within their bodies. These bacteria convert chemicals from the vent water into nutrients, which the tube worms absorb directly. It is a remarkable partnership. The worm provides a stable environment for the bacteria. The bacteria provide food. Together, they survive in one of the most extreme environments on Earth. Around the tube worms, other animals gather. White crabs crawl across the rocky surfaces near the vents, feeding on bacterial mats that grow along the mineral structures. Shrimp cluster near the warm vent openings, carefully balancing the heat of the vent water against the cold of the surrounding ocean. Some species of shrimp living near hydrothermal vents have lost their ability to see entirely. In the perpetual darkness of the deep ocean, vision becomes less useful. Instead, these animals rely on specialized heat-sensitive organs that allow them to detect the warmth of nearby vent openings. In this way, they navigate a world where light has no meaning. The entire ecosystem pulses with quiet activity. Water rich with minerals flows upward from the Earth's crust. Bacteria transform chemical energy into living matter. Larger animals feed upon the bacteria and each other, forming a complex food web sustained entirely by the hidden energy of the planet itself. For scientists, the discovery of hydrothermal vents in the late 20th century was astonishing. Before these ecosystems were found, it was widely believed that sunlight was the ultimate source of energy for all life on Earth. The existence of vent communities revealed that life could thrive using completely different energy systems. Some researchers even began to wonder whether similar ecosystems might exist elsewhere in the universe. On distant moons, such as Europa, one of Jupiter's icy satellites, vast oceans may lie beneath thick layers of ice. If hydrothermal vents exist there, it is possible that life, very different from our own, could survive in those alien seas. Bull Breaké. In this way, the deep ocean of Earth has become a window into the possibilities of life beyond our planet. But here, on our own world, the vent ecosystems continue their quiet existence far below the surface. The chimneys grow slowly as minerals accumulate around their openings. Some vents remain active for decades. Others may shut down as geological activity shifts beneath the seafloor. When a vent stops flowing, the ecosystem around it gradually disappears. The tube worms die, the shrimp scatter, the crabs move on in search of another source of chemical energy. Yet elsewhere, along the underwater ridges of the ocean floor, new vents continue to form. The cycle repeats. Across the deep ocean, these hidden oases of life appear and disappear over geological time, each one supporting an entire community of creatures adapted to this unusual world. As we drift quietly above one of these vent fields, the water shimmers faintly with rising plumes of mineral-rich fluid. The chimneys stand silent beneath the weight of the ocean, and the animals living here continue their patient existence, unaware of the distant world of sunlight far above. Beyond the vents, the seafloor stretches outward, once again into vast plains of darkness. But deeper still, another realm waits. There are places in the ocean where the seafloor descends into trenches so deep that even hydrothermal vents cannot be found there. These trenches represent the deepest environments on Earth, places where the pressure becomes almost unimaginable, places where only the most resilient forms of life can survive. And in the final part of our journey, we will descend into those deepest regions of the ocean, the abyssal trenches. But for now, we remain here beside the quiet chimneys of the hydrothermal vents, watching life flourish in a world without sunlight. The ocean continues to reveal its hidden wonders, and our descent is not yet finished. The quiet cities of the deep. If we remain near the hydrothermal vents for a little longer, the scene begins to reveal even more subtle details. At first glance, the chimneys appear harsh and almost lifeless. Dark towers of mineral rock rising through the cold ocean water. Yet when we look carefully, these structures are surrounded by a quiet city of living creatures. Clusters of tube worms sway gently in the slow currents. Their red plumes extend into the water like delicate underwater gardens, each one absorbing the chemical-rich fluids that rise from the vents below. The worms themselves remain anchored safely inside their white protective tubes, motionless except for the soft movements of the plumes. Nearby, fields of bacteria coat the mineral surfaces. These bacteria appear as pale mats stretching across the rocks like thin layers of snow. They feed on the chemicals released by the vents, converting energy from sulfur compounds into the nutrients that sustain the entire ecosystem. Everything here begins with these microscopic organisms. Without them, the vent communities could not exist. Around the bacterial mats, small animals gather. Crabs move slowly along the rocks, their legs carefully navigating the uneven terrain of mineral chimneys and vent openings. Some species of vent crabs appear almost ghostly white, having evolved without the need for pigmentation in the darkness of the deep sea. Shrimp cluster in dense groups near the edges of the vent plumes. These animals often gather in astonishing numbers, forming swarms that shimmer faintly as they move together through the rising currents of warm water. Their bodies are adapted to tolerate temperatures that would be dangerous for most deep-sea creatures. Yet, even these shrimp must maintain a careful distance. Too close to the vent opening, and the water becomes dangerously hot. Too far away, and the chemical nutrients they rely on begin to disappear. Life at hydrothermal vents often exists within a narrow band of conditions where survival is possible. Move only a few meters in the wrong direction, and the environment changes completely. Some animals venture closer to the vent openings than others. Vent crabs sometimes climb directly onto the warm chimneys themselves, feeding on the bacteria that coat the mineral surfaces. Their bodies remain carefully positioned between the extreme heat of the vent fluids and the cold water of the surrounding ocean. In this narrow zone, life thrives. The water above the vent field shimmers slightly as mineral-rich plumes continue rising toward the darker water above. These plumes eventually cool and disperse into the surrounding ocean, carrying dissolved minerals across vast distances. Even far from the vents themselves, traces of their influence can sometimes be detected in the deep ocean currents. The deep sea is more connected than it first appears. Animals that live near vents often travel between different vent systems over long periods of time. Larvae released into the water column drift with deep currents, eventually settling near new vent fields that may form hundreds of kilometers away. In this way, vent ecosystems slowly spread across the ocean floor. Each vent field becomes a small island of life within the vast darkness of the deep sea. Unlike islands on land, these ecosystems can be isolated from one another for long periods of time. Over thousands of years, this isolation allows species to evolve in unique ways, producing animals found nowhere else in the ocean. Scientists exploring different vent systems often discover species entirely new to science. Strange snails with iron-coated shells, crabs with unusual sensory organs, bacteria capable of thriving in extreme temperatures and chemical conditions. Each discovery expands our understanding of how adaptable life can be. The deep ocean continues to surprise those who study it. Yet, despite the unusual animals and dramatic geological activity, the atmosphere around hydrothermal vents remains strangely calm. There are no crashing waves, no storms, no sudden shifts in light. The deep ocean moves slowly. Vent fluids rise continuously from the Earth's crust, but the surrounding water remains quiet and still. Animals feed patiently, drifting through the warm currents or resting among the mineral chimneys. Everything happens at a steady pace. Even the chimneys themselves grow gradually. Minerals dissolved in the vent water accumulate layer by layer around the openings, slowly building taller structures over time. Some chimneys reach heights of 20 meters or more before geological changes alter the flow of the vent. Eventually, a vent may fall silent. When the flow of hot water stops, the ecosystem surrounding it begins to change. Without the chemical energy provided by the vent fluids, the bacteria disappear, tube worms wither, crabs and shrimp migrate elsewhere in search of active vent fields. The once busy ecosystem fades back into the quiet darkness of the seafloor. But somewhere else along the mid-ocean ridges, new vents continue to form. The Earth's crust remains active beneath the ocean as tectonic plates slowly shift and separate. Cracks open in the seafloor. Seawater seeps downward into these cracks, becomes heated by molten rock, and eventually rises again through new openings. And where those openings appear, life returns over and over again across the hidden landscapes of the deep sea. The cycle continues. For the creatures living here, hydrothermal vents are both home and opportunity. For scientists, they represent one of the most extraordinary discoveries of modern ocean exploration. But as we drift quietly above the vent field, another realization slowly emerges. Even these remarkable ecosystems occupy only a small portion of the deep ocean. Beyond the chimneys and bacterial mats, the seafloor stretches outward once more into vast plains of darkness, and somewhere deeper still lie the most remote environments on Earth. Ocean trenches. These trenches descend far below the surrounding seafloor, forming the deepest valleys on the planet. In these places, the pressure becomes almost unimaginable, and the water grows colder and darker still. Few humans have ever reached those depths, yet life survives there as well. In the final part of our journey, we will descend into those deepest regions of the ocean, into a world where the pressure of the sea reaches its greatest extremes and the silence becomes even more profound. But for now, we remain near the quiet chimneys of the hydrothermal vents, where life flourishes in the absence of sunlight, a hidden world, sustained not by the sky above, but by the restless energy of the earth itself. And somewhere below, the deepest waters of the planet wait patiently in the dark, the slow breath of the earth. If we remain beside the hydrothermal vents a little longer, another quiet truth becomes clear. These chimneys rising from the seafloor are not permanent structures. They are temporary expressions of the Earth's internal activity. Brief moments in the long geological life of the ocean floor. Deep beneath the sediment and rock, the crust of the planet is slowly shifting. The seafloor is not still. Along the great underwater mountain chains known as mid-ocean ridges, tectonic plates are gradually pulling apart. As they separate, molten rock from the Earth's interior rises upward to fill the space between them. When this molten rock cools, it forms new ocean crust. This process happens incredibly slowly, a few centimeters each year. Yet, over millions of years, it reshapes entire ocean basins. The hydrothermal vents we see here exist because of this movement. Seawater seeps deep into cracks in the crust, traveling downward through kilometers of rock. As it approaches hot magma below, the water heats dramatically and dissolves minerals from the surrounding stone. Eventually, the water rises again through new openings in the seafloor, and the vents appear. In this way, the deep ocean reveals something profound. The seafloor is alive with geological motion, not violent motion like earthquakes or volcanic eruptions on land, but slow, patient movement that unfolds across unimaginable spans of time. The earth breathes quietly beneath the ocean. Warm water rises, cold water sinks, minerals circulate between rock and sea, and life gathers wherever energy becomes available. If we drift slowly away from the vent chimneys, the environment begins to change again. The shimmering plumes fade behind us. The dense communities of tube worms and crabs gradually disappear. Once again, the seafloor returns to its quiet plains of sediment. The darkness deepens. The animals here are different from those near the vents. Sea cucumbers glide slowly across the soft sediment, consuming tiny particles of organic material buried within the mud. Their bodies stretch and contract gently as they move, leaving faint trails behind them. Nearby, a brittle star spreads its delicate arms across the seafloor. These animals resemble starfish, but possess thinner, more flexible limbs that allow them to crawl easily across the sediment. Each arm moves independently, exploring the surrounding surface for traces of food. Everything here happens slowly. Food arrives rarely, carried down from the distant surface by the long fall of marine snow. For the creatures of the abyssal plains, patience remains the most valuable skill. Above the seafloor, the water remains calm and cold. Occasionally, a deep-sea fish drifts past, its body adapted to the immense pressure surrounding it. Some species possess long trailing fins that move like ribbons through the water. Others glide almost motionless, conserving energy as they search for prey. The deep ocean does not reward unnecessary movement. Even predators often drift quietly until an opportunity appears. Farther away, another faint glow appears. A jelly-like organism pulses slowly through the water column. Its body produces a gentle blue light that fades gradually behind it as it moves. These bioluminescent displays remain one of the most common sights in the deep ocean. Without sunlight, many animals rely on their own light to navigate the darkness. Some species flash suddenly when disturbed, startling predators long enough to escape. Others glow softly as they drift. The effect is subtle but beautiful, like stars moving slowly through a silent sky. And in many ways, the deep ocean resembles space more than it does the surface world. There is no horizon, no sense of direction, only darkness, filled with distant points of light. As we continue drifting farther across the abyssal plains, the seafloor gradually begins to change once more. The flat sediment begins to slope downward. At first, the slope is gentle, almost unnoticeable. But as we move farther along, the descent becomes more pronounced. We are approaching the edge of something much larger. In the distance, the seafloor suddenly falls away. The plain ends, and beyond it, the ocean descends into a vast trench carved deep into the Earth's crust. These trenches are among the most extreme environments on our planet. They form where tectonic plates collide, forcing one plate downward beneath another in a process known as subduction. Over millions of years, this motion creates enormous valleys in the seafloor, valleys deeper than the tallest mountains on land. Standing at the edge of one of these trenches would feel like looking into a canyon far larger than anything visible on land. But here in the deep ocean, the trench remains hidden beneath kilometers of water. The darkness below becomes even deeper. The pressure increases dramatically, and the animals that survive there must endure conditions unlike anywhere else on Earth. Few human explorers have ever reached these depths, yet the trench ecosystems continue their quiet existence, just as the vent communities and abyssal plains have done for millions of years. If we drift a little closer to the edge, the slope of the trench becomes clearer. The walls descend steeply into darkness. Sediment slides slowly downward along the trench slopes, forming deep layers of mud across the trench floor. Some animals live along these slopes, adapted to survive under the most intense pressures found anywhere on Earth. Small amphipods, shrimp-like creatures, scurry across the sediment. Strange snailfish glide gently through the water near the trench floor, their delicate bodies adapted to survive where pressure exceeds 1,000 times that of the surface. Life persists even here. The deeper scientists explore the ocean, the more they discover that living organisms can survive in conditions once thought impossible. But that world belongs to the final stage of our journey. For now, we pause quietly at the edge of the trench. Behind us lie the hydrothermal vents,
where life flourishes through the hidden chemistry of the earth. Above us stretches the immense darkness of the midnight zone, and below us, the deepest valleys of the ocean descend into silence. In the final part of our descent, we will follow that slope downward into the deepest trenches on the planet, where the pressure reaches its greatest extremes and the ocean reveals its most remote environments. The journey is not yet finished. The deepest waters still lie ahead, the quiet edge of the abyss. If we remain here at the edge of the trench a little longer, the scale of the deep ocean begins to feel even more extraordinary. Behind us stretch the vast abyssal plains, endless landscapes of soft sediment where sea cucumbers drift slowly across the ocean floor and brittle stars extend their delicate arms through the mud. Farther still lie the hydrothermal vents, where the restless energy of the earth creates islands of life in a world without sunlight. Each of these environments exists quietly beneath thousands of meters of water. Most of human history passed without anyone knowing they were there. Above us, the distant surface continues its familiar rhythm. Storms may pass across the open sea. Ships may travel from continent to continent. Waves may rise and fall beneath the wind. Yet none of those movements disturb the calm of the deep ocean. Here, everything moves slowly. Sediment settles gently through the water. Grain by grain, deep currents travel across entire ocean basins over the course of centuries. Animals drift patiently through the darkness, conserving energy in a world where food arrives only rarely. Even the seafloor itself changes at a geological pace. The ocean floor spreads gradually as tectonic plates separate. Mountains rise where magma cools beneath the sea. Trenches deepen where plates sink slowly back into the Earth's interior. The deep ocean is not frozen in time. It is simply patient. From our quiet position above the trench, the darkness below feels almost endless. The slope of the trench disappears gradually into the depth, its walls descending farther than the tallest mountains on land. Somewhere far below lies the trench floor, one of the most remote environments on the planet. Few humans have ever seen it, yet even there, life survives. Tiny amphipods crawl across the sediment. Strange snailfish glide slowly through the water. Microbial communities thrive within the mud itself, feeding on chemical reactions that occur deep within the seafloor. The deeper scientists explore, the more they discover that life has an astonishing ability to adapt, even in the most extreme environments on Earth. But reaching those depths requires descending even farther than the abyssal plains, farther than the hydrothermal vents, farther even than the quiet landscapes we have crossed so far. Below us lies the Hadal Zone, the deepest region of the ocean, a world where the pressure becomes immense, the darkness absolute, and the sea floor descends into the deepest valleys our planet has to offer. And in the final part of our journey, we will follow the trench downward into those hidden depths. For now, though, we pause here at the quiet edge of the abyss. Behind us lies the strange beauty of the hydrothermal vents and the silent plains of the deep ocean floor. Above us stretches the vast midnight ocean, and below us, the deepest waters on Earth wait patiently in the dark. The ocean has guided us gently through its layers,
from the calm surface to the twilight waters, through the midnight depths and across the hidden landscapes of the seafloor. But the journey is not yet complete. The deepest world still lies ahead. The deepest trenches. Beyond the edge of the trench, the ocean descends into its most remote well. From where we drift now, the seafloor begins to fall away sharply, forming steep slopes that vanish gradually into darkness. These slopes lead downward into trenches carved deep into the Earth's crust, places so profound that even the vast plains of the abyssal ocean feel shallow by comparison. This is the Hadal Zone, named after Hades, the ancient Greek word for the underworld. The Hadal Zone represents the deepest environments found anywhere in the ocean. These trenches form where tectonic plates collide, and one plate slowly slides beneath another, sinking back into the mantle of the Earth. Over millions of years, this motion creates enormous valleys beneath the sea. Some trenches stretch for thousands of kilometers across the ocean floor. Their depths reach farther downward than the tallest mountains rise upward on land. The most famous of these trenches lies in the western Pacific Ocean, the Mariana Trench. At its deepest point, known as the Challenger Deep, the ocean reaches nearly 11 kilometers below the surface. If Mount Everest were placed inside this trench, its summit would still lie more than 2 kilometers beneath the ocean's surface. The scale of these depths is difficult to imagine. From the surface above, sunlight travels downward through the ocean for a few hundred meters before fading away. Even the twilight zone disappears long before the Hadal trenches begin. Here, darkness has remained uninterrupted for millions of years. The pressure at these depths is extraordinary. Every square centimeter of surface experiences the weight of the entire ocean above it. The pressure can exceed 1,000 times the atmospheric pressure at sea level. For a human being, such conditions would be impossible to survive without specially designed submersibles built to withstand the crushing force of the deep ocean. Yet even here, life persists. As we descend slowly along the trench wall, the seafloor landscape becomes visible once again. The slopes are covered in layers of soft sediment that have slid gradually downward from the surrounding abyssal plains. Occasionally, rocky outcrops appear where the trench walls expose deeper layers of ocean crust. Small animals move quietly across this landscape. Amphipods, tiny shrimp-like creatures, crawl through the sediment, feeding on organic material carried down from the upper ocean. Though small, these animals are among the most common inhabitants of the Hadal trenches. Their bodies are adapted to survive under extreme pressure. Flexible shells and specialized cellular structures allow them to function normally where most animals could not survive. Nearby, another unusual animal glides slowly through the water. The Hadal snailfish. This delicate fish has become one of the most iconic inhabitants of the deepest trenches. Its body appears soft and almost fragile, yet it thrives in an environment where the pressure is immense. Unlike many fish living in shallower waters, the snailfish lacks the gas-filled swim bladder used to control buoyancy. Such structures would collapse under the pressure of the Hadal depth. Instead, its body is composed mostly of soft tissues that tolerate compression easily. The fish moves gently above the trench floor, searching for small crustaceans and other prey among the sediments. Life here is quiet. Movement is slow, Energy is scarce. The trench floor receives only the faintest supply of nutrients, drifting down from the surface far above. Marine snow continues its slow descent even to these extreme depths, carrying fragments of life from the upper ocean. Occasionally, larger events occur. A dead fish may drift downward for days before reaching the trench floor. In rare cases, the body of a whale or large marine animal may descend into these depths, becoming the center of a temporary feast for scavengers. But most of the time, the Hadal zone remains calm and patient. The water is cold, the darkness complete, the pressure immense, and yet the animals that live here continue their quiet existence, perfectly adapted to conditions that once seemed impossible for life. For scientists, the Hadal Trenches represent one of the final frontiers of exploration on Earth. Only a handful of human expeditions have ever reached the deepest points of the ocean. Specialized submersibles descend slowly through kilometers of water, carrying cameras and instruments designed to observe these remote environments. Each descent reveals something new species, new behaviors, new clues about how life adapts to the most extreme conditions on our planet. The deeper we explore, the more we realize that the ocean still holds many secrets. Even now, vast portions of the deep sea remain unexplored. Entire ecosystems may exist in trenches that no human has ever visited. New species may drift through the darkness unseen. The ocean has always been patient with its mysteries. It reveals them slowly. As we drift quietly above the trench floor, the immense scale of the deep ocean becomes clear once again. Above us lies the midnight zone, stretching upward through thousands of meters of water. Above that lies the twilight zone, where faint blue light still filters down from the surface. Farther above still lies the sunlit ocean, the world of coral reefs, waves, and open skies. And beyond that lies the familiar surface of our planet. From the calm shoreline where we began our journey, the ocean appeared simple, a vast surface of moving water beneath the sky. But beneath that surface lies an entire hidden world, layer upon layer of environments, each one stranger and more remarkable than the last. The twilight waters, filled with drifting lanternfish, the midnight zone, illuminated by living light, the hydrothermal vents where life flourishes without sunlight, and finally, the deepest trenches, where the pressure of the ocean reaches its greatest extremes. For millions of years, these worlds have existed quietly beneath the waves. The creatures living here follow rhythms older than human history. Currents move slowly through the depths. Sediment settles gently onto the seafloor. Bioluminescent lights flicker softly in the darkness. The ocean continues its patient existence, and far above, the surface world carries on, unaware of the immense landscapes hidden below. As our journey through the deep ocean comes to its end, we rise once more in our imagination, upward through the trenches, past the silent plains of the abyss, beyond the glowing chimneys of the hydrothermal vents, through the midnight darkness and the dim twilight waters, until finally the faint blue light of the surface returns. The waves move gently beneath the moon, and the ocean appears calm once again. But now we know that beneath that quiet surface lies one of the most extraordinary environments on Earth, a hidden world of darkness, pressure, patience, and life. A world that continues its silent story beneath the sea. And perhaps, somewhere in those depths, there are still mysteries waiting to be discovered. The quiet memory of the ocean. If we remain a little longer in the depths of the trench, something unusual begins to settle over the scene. Not silence exactly, because the ocean is never entirely silent. Water shifts slowly through the narrow valleys of the trench. Tiny organisms drift through the currents. Far above, distant movements ripple faintly through the enormous column of water that separates this place from the surface. Yet the feeling here is one of stillness. The Hadal trenches are among the most stable environments on Earth. Storms that rage across the ocean's surface never reach these depths. Winds may drive enormous waves across thousands of kilometers of open water, but the energy of those storms fades long before it approaches the trench floor. Here, the ocean remains calm. The temperature changes very little. The darkness never lifts. The pressure remains constant, pressing gently but firmly on everything within the trench. In many ways, these deepest parts of the ocean are places where time feels slower. Sediment settles gradually across the trench floor, grain by grain. Some of that sediment has been drifting downward for centuries, traveling through the ocean before finally reaching this quiet resting place. Tiny particles accumulate slowly. Layers form over thousands of years. The seafloor changes almost imperceptibly. In these depths, even geological time seems patient. Yet the trenches are not isolated from the rest of the planet. From time to time, subtle tremors pass through the seafloor as tectonic plates continue their slow movement beneath the ocean. These movements shape the deep valleys of the trenches and drive the geological processes that form hydrothermal vents elsewhere along the ocean ridges. The Earth itself is constantly in motion, even in the deepest places. As we drift quietly above the trench floor, the small creatures that live here continue their calm routines. An amphipod crawls slowly across the sediment, searching for tiny fragments of food. A snailfish glides past with gentle movements of its fins, disappearing gradually into the darkness beyond. Microbial life thrives within the mud itself, feeding on chemical reactions occurring beneath the seafloor. Each organism plays its small part in the quiet ecosystem of the trench. Nothing moves quickly. There is no need. The deep ocean rewards patience. For millions of years, these ecosystems have continued their slow cycles beneath the waves, almost completely hidden from the world above. Human exploration of these depths is still very young. The first successful descent to the deepest point of the Mariana Trench did not occur until 1960, when the bathyscaphe Trieste carried two explorers slowly down into the darkness of the Challenger Deep. The descent took nearly 5 hours. The return journey lasted even longer. For a brief moment, human eyes looked upon the deepest known place in the ocean. Since then, only a handful of expeditions have visited those depths again. Each journey requires specialized vessels capable of withstanding immense pressure, along with carefully designed equipment to observe and record what exists there. Yet, even with modern technology, the Hadal trenches remain among the least explored places on Earth. Much of their biology remains unknown. Many species living there have never been observed. Entire ecosystems may still wait quietly in trenches that no human expedition has yet visited. The ocean is vast enough to hold many secrets, and perhaps that is part of its quiet beauty. Even in an age of satellites and deep-sea exploration, there are still places on this planet where nature continues its ancient rhythms far beyond the reach of everyday human life. The Hadal Trenches are among those places. If we look upward now, the darkness stretches endlessly above us. Kilometers of ocean rise toward the distant surface. Above that lies the world of light, the world of winds and waves, the world where humans live their lives beside the sea, often unaware of the extraordinary environments hidden beneath the water. From the shoreline, the ocean often appears simple, a wide horizon, moving waves, perhaps the distant shape of a ship traveling across the water. But beneath that familiar surface lies an entire planet within a planet, a layered world. The sunlit waters filled with coral reefs and migrating fish, the twilight zone where lanternfish drift through dim blue light, the midnight depths illuminated by living bioluminescence, the hydrothermal vents where life thrives without sunlight, and finally, the Hadal Trenches, where the deepest valleys of the earth hold their quiet ecosystems in complete darkness. Each layer of the ocean reveals a different story, yet all of them remain connected. Currents carry nutrients between them. Animals migrate through them. Sediment drifts slowly downward through every layer until it reaches the deepest seafloor. The ocean is not a collection of separate worlds. It is one vast, continuous system, and for millions of years, it has been shaping the conditions of life on our planet. As we slowly rise in our imagination from the trench floor, the deep ocean begins to fade gently into darkness once more. The creatures of the Hadal Zone continue their silent lives. The sediment settles softly across the seafloor, and far above, the surface waves move quietly beneath the moon. The ocean has always been there, before cities, before ships, before human history itself, and long after our own stories have faded. The deep ocean will likely remain, vast, patient, and quietly alive beneath the sea. For now, we leave it in its calm darkness, a hidden world, beneath the waves, still waiting, as it always has, in the quiet depths of the Earth's oceans, the ancient ocean. If we rise slowly in our imagination from the trench floor, the deep ocean begins to unfold once more around us. Kilometers of water stretch upward into darkness, forming a vast column that has existed for longer than human memory, long before cities appeared on land, before ships crossed the oceans, and even before the first human beings walked the earth. These waters were already here. The deep ocean is one of the oldest continuous environments on our planet. While continents slowly shift and mountains rise and erode over millions of years, the great ocean basins change far more gradually. The waters circulating through the deepest parts of the ocean can remain there for centuries before returning to the surface. Some of the water, drifting slowly through the Hadal Trenches today, may have begun its journey long before modern history began. Ocean currents move with extraordinary patience. Cold water sinks near the polar regions of the planet and begins a slow journey through the deep sea, traveling across entire ocean basins over hundreds of years. Eventually, that water will rise again in distant parts of the world, carrying nutrients that support marine ecosystems near the surface. This circulation connects every ocean on Earth, from the deepest trenches to the sunlit surface. The waters of the planet remain part of a single immense system. The creatures living in the deep ocean have evolved alongside this ancient circulation. Many species have ancestors that stretch back tens of millions of years. Some deep-sea animals resemble forms that appeared in the fossil record long before modern mammals evolved on land. In the quiet darkness of the deep ocean, evolution often proceeds slowly. Stable environments allow certain body forms to persist for immense spans of time. Some animals living in the abyss today may look remarkably similar to creatures that lived when dinosaurs still walked across the continents. In this sense, the deep ocean is not only a place of mystery, it is also a living archive of Earth's history. Each layer of water holds clues about the past. Chemical signatures dissolved in the deep sea reveal changes in climate that occurred thousands of years ago. Tiny shells drifting through the water eventually settle on the ocean floor, forming sediment layers that record shifts in ocean temperature, volcanic activity, and even the growth of ancient ice sheets. Scientists studying deep-sea sediments can read these layers like pages in a very old book. Each layer tells a story. A colder climate, a warmer ocean, a period when glaciers expanded across the continents, a time when sea levels rose and flooded coastal lands. The deep ocean remembers. It stores traces of events that occurred long before humans began writing history. And yet, despite this ancient record, the ocean itself remains calm and patient. Water moves slowly through the deep basins. Bioluminescent creatures drift quietly through the midnight darkness. Sediment continues its gentle descent toward the seafloor. Nothing in the deep ocean seems rushed. Even the animals living here follow rhythms that feel almost timeless. A lanternfish rises slowly toward the upper waters during the night, before returning again to the safety of the deeper ocean before dawn. A jelly-like creature pulses through the water column with steady, gentle movements. A snailfish glides quietly along the trench floor, searching the sediment for small prey. Each movement becomes part of the vast, slow choreography of the deep sea. Above us now, faint hints of lighter water begin to appear as we imagine rising slowly toward shallower depths. The darkness begins to soften. Far above, the twilight zone waits once more, and beyond that lies the familiar surface of the ocean. But even when we return to that surface world, the deep ocean remains beneath us, always present, always vast, always quietly alive. For most of human history, the deep sea remained hidden and unknown. Ancient sailors crossed the oceans without realizing that entire mountain ranges, valleys, and ecosystems existed far below their ships. Even today, scientists estimate that much of the deep ocean remains unexplored. New species continue to be discovered. New landscapes continue to appear on maps as advanced exploration vessels scan the seafloor. Each expedition reveals how much more there is still to learn. The deep ocean holds more mystery than any other environment on our planet, and perhaps that mystery is part of what makes it so fascinating. Beneath the waves lies a world that continues its quiet story regardless of human attention. Storms may pass across the surface, ships may travel from continent to continent, cities may grow along the coasts, yet deep below those familiar scenes, the ocean continues its patient rhythms. Currents flow, creatures drift, sediment settles softly across the seafloor, and in the deepest trenches, life persists quietly beneath the immense weight of the sea. As our journey through the deep ocean slowly comes to its end, we return once more to the surface in our imagination. The waves move gently beneath the moon. The horizon stretches wide beneath the night sky. From here, the ocean looks peaceful and simple. But now we know that beneath that calm surface lies a world far larger and more mysterious than it first appears. A world of darkness and light, of pressure and patience, of ancient water moving slowly through the deepest parts of our planet. And somewhere far below the waves, the deep ocean continues its silent story, returning toward the surface. As we continue rising slowly in our imagination, the immense darkness of the deep ocean begins to soften. The water above grows just slightly lighter, not bright, not yet blue, but less completely black than the huddled depths we have just left behind. Kilometer by kilometer, the trench disappears beneath us. The steep walls fade into the distance. The quiet creatures of the deepest ocean return to their patient lives below. Above us stretches the long column of water that connects every layer of the sea, from the deepest trenches to the surface waves. The ocean forms a continuous world, a world that moves slowly, breathes slowly, and changes slowly. For a moment, imagine the scale of it. Nearly 3/4 of the surface of our planet is covered by ocean. Beneath those waters lie mountain ranges longer than any on land, plains larger than entire continents, and trenches deeper than the tallest peaks. Yet most of it remains unseen. Most of it remains quiet. As we continue rising, faint flashes of light appear once again. At first, they are small and scattered, a soft pulse drifting through the water, a brief flicker like a distant star. These are the living lights of the midnight zone, returning around us. Bioluminescent creatures drift through the water column, producing their own glow in the darkness. Some flash suddenly, others glow gently as they move. For the animals of the deep ocean, light is not something that comes from the sky. It is something that comes from life itself. Above us now, the water slowly changes color. The deep black softens toward dark blue. The pressure surrounding us gradually decreases. Creatures adapted to the extreme depths give way to new animals better suited to the layers above. Lanternfish begin their slow migrations through the twilight zone. These small fish rise toward shallower waters during the night to feed, then descend again before dawn. Their movements form one of the largest migrations on Earth. Millions of animals moving together through the ocean every single day. The twilight zone feels different from the trenches. There is still darkness here, but not complete darkness. A faint memory of sunlight lingers far above. The ocean feels slightly more alive. Currents move a little faster. More animals drift through the water, and as we continue rising, the blue of the upper ocean slowly returns. At last, the surface appears above us. The water grows brighter. The waves move gently beneath the open sky. From here, the ocean looks calm, just a vast expanse of water stretching toward the horizon. But now we understand something that was invisible at the beginning of our journey. Beneath that calm surface lies an entire hidden world, layer upon layer of life and landscape. The sunlit waters filled with coral reefs and drifting plankton. The twilight zone, where lanternfish travel through dim blue light. The midnight depths, where creatures glow softly in the darkness. The hydrothermal vents, where life thrives without sunlight. And the deepest trenches, where the earth itself sinks slowly beneath the ocean floor. All of it exists quietly beneath the waves. For millions of years, these environments have continued their silent rhythms. Ocean currents move slowly across entire basins. Sediment settles gently onto the seafloor. Creatures drift patiently through the darkness. Long before humans crossed the oceans, the deep sea was already there. And long after our own stories have passed, the ocean will likely remain vast, patient, quietly alive beneath the surface of the earth. Tonight, we have only imagined traveling through a small part of that hidden world. Yet even that small journey reveals something extraordinary. The ocean is not just a surface of moving waves. It is a layered universe beneath the sea, a world of darkness, light, pressure, patience, and life. And somewhere far below the surface, in the deepest waters of the planet, the ocean continues its ancient story. Slowly, quietly, and without end. Now the waves move gently again beneath the night sky. The horizon stretches wide and calm, and the deep ocean rests quietly beneath it all.